Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of the Idaho House Republicans podcast, where you get to learn a little bit more about the legislators that you have sent to the State House. And today we're very privileged to have Representative Robert Beiswenger, and he represents Legislative District 8, and he sits in Seat A. So he's 8A, and he's in his first term. Welcome to the Idaho House Republicans podcast, Robert Beiswenger.
Rob would be great, but yeah, thank you for having me. Yeah,
all right, we'll go with Rob. All right. So let me tell you a little bit about Representative Beiswenger. He was raised in Pennsylvania, so you are a Steelers fan or an Eagles fan?
Eagles.
Okay, that says a lot about you. And he was a graduate of Penn State University, and he's in political science, by the way. And he was very involved with the Indiana Right to Work movement, and he's a co-founder and collaborative Collaborative Behavior Solutions, which was dealt with autism and developmental disability. That was a thing in his past, and now he works for the Money Metal Exchange in Eagle, Idaho, and he lives in Horseshoe Bend, and he has a lovely wife, Crystal, and who homeschools, which is a sacrifice. It's difficult, and she homeschools two kids, Samantha and Celeste. So that's pretty cool, right?
Absolutely.
So anyway, welcome to the Idaho House Republicans podcast, Robert Beiswenger. So let's talk about Legislative District 8.
Yeah.
Where is Legislative District 8 and what issues do they care most about? And obviously they sent you to State House to represent those issues.
Well, District 8 is huge. It's literally like square miles, the biggest one in the state. You've got all of Boise County. So that's Horseshoe Bend, Guard Valley, Idaho City, essentially. You've got Valley County, so McCall, Donnelly, Cascade, and all the territory that's up there that's not uninhabited. Then you can drive through Boise County to get to Custer County, just like Chalice and all that area out there. I mean, it's from Horseshoe Bend to there. I mean, going hard, it's probably a 3-hour ride.
Really?
To get to Chalice with good weather, and there's not too many deer on the road or rocks.
So door knocking must be fun during the campaign, huh?
Yeah.
Got to take an airplane to...
I did take an airplane once up there. It was a little dicey, honestly, going up through the mountains and all that. But yeah, we did do that once. And also we have Elmore County. So you kind of come around, so you're kind of circling Boise to the north and to the east. You get Glens Ferry, Mountain Home, and all of Elmore County. So it's 4 spread out counties. In some ways, I'm fortunate to kind of be in the middle because I work in Eagle and live in Horseshoe Bend. I can kind of get to most places about a couple hours. Mountain Home's the biggest city. McCall's big, but a couple hours kind of each way there. So I can get there, but obviously you have to rely on other people to communicate in the district, web pages, emails, phones, and texts. You definitely got to use technology to interface with it and just kind of do the best you can.
Right, and then you talk about something like Legislative District 17 or 18 where you could draw like a 5-mile square radius and that's the whole thing. Yeah. Well, one thing that's interesting too is that you're a freshman, and so why did you decide that you wanted to run for the Idaho House?
Yeah, I mean it's kind of a crazy story. Had a little political background with Right to Work, running the grassroots operation there in Indiana, so I knew a little bit about this stuff. And we had we moved out here in 19. Didn't even know we'd live here permanently. It was kind of just a family change. Wanted to bring the family out. We rented a house, and then the whole COVID started up in March, and our lease for our rent expired in June. We were kind of as a family, where do we want to go? But we really liked being here and the people being around here. The scenery, of course, it's a pretty amazing compared to Indianapolis.
And it's a right to work state.
It is a right to work state. I didn't have to worry about that. But was that a good or bad? Because I could have worked to make it one if it wasn't. So I knew how to do that.
Well, Dan McKnight's father took care of that. So many, many years ago.
Yeah, in the 80s. Yeah, Idaho was 86, in Oklahoma in 2001. Then Indiana was the second one after that in 2012. So it's quite a gap between those years passing it.
Interesting.
Since then, we've gotten a few other Midwestern states. So I got here, COVID hit. There were places forcing the COVID shot, honestly, and dealing with kids with autism over the years. There were a lot of stories about people who were not satisfied with what happened with their kids regarding vaccines. Had a lot of those conversations. And then there was even like the Horseshoe Bend school had tried to go behind the parents' backs and say, here, your kids can have a COVID shot if they were 14 and up. And the way the state law was written is if you were 14 and up, you could consent to a medical treatment at your school. Well, I'm sure that was fine for Band-Aids and
but you're not an
first
adult.
aid
this
kind of
is
thing.
not like the decision you should make.
Yeah, so I met with Dorothy Moon about it and kind of expressed some frustration, zero intent to run for anything. And then she's like, well, look, actually, I'm going to run for Secretary of State. This seat's going to be open. You can fix it yourself. And I was like, so I talked to work. They're like, yeah, we'll help you. And I thought maybe my wife would talk me out of it. Called home at lunch, like, you're not going to believe the phone call I just had here asking me to run for office. She's like, honestly, you should do it.
Right.
So this is 21, the end of 21. So again, only been in the state a couple of years, just kind of, and I told, Dorothy, I said, you honestly, like, I kind of know what to do. I said, but honestly, like, I don't know hardly anybody here. Like, I don't know if like really the best choice to kind of maybe help somebody else. And I ended up agreeing to do it. I lost the first time. I actually won Custer and Boise counties, and then narrowly lost the other one. So I got 47% overall. And so a lot of people encouraged me to run again. Said, well, look, let's just take a break. Let's just see how things play out for a little bit. It's a lot of work to run, big district to canvass and all that. And then there's a few votes that the guy who beat me I didn't really agree with. And so I ran again and got 54% on the second try. And so then now I'm here.
And now you're here. Yeah. And so one thing we didn't cover that I did ask about is what issues does your district care most about?
I mean, obviously, it's a lot of rural areas, all kinds of, growing, populations and how that impacts them. Some property taxes, those big issues, I think, are probably the main driving issues that people are worried about. Just property taxes, just because the price of property has increased so dramatically. In my house, too, we bought just a few years ago.
Right.
I mean, a significant increase, and your property taxes go right up with that. And I think it's a real struggle for people who move here. They kind of budget in what they have for really think, okay, my house is worth this much. I can have this much in tax, give or take a little bit. And your house is worth $200,000 more a couple years later. You're like, well, I didn't budget for that.
Right.
I'm retired. I came here to like finish out my life here. And now I've got this big extra bill I wasn't anticipating. So I mean, that's a real struggle, I think, in the district.
So how agricultural, like, do you have a lot of agriculture? Do you have a lot of dairy business there? Like, what's kind of agriculture do you have?
Yeah, I mean, Elmore County's got a lot of beef, Valley County, Custer, Elmore County is definitely a lot of ag. There's some dairy stuff down there for sure. And especially, you do have a little different climates. You have more mountainous climates between Boise, Valley, and Custer, but then you've got the flat southern county of Elmore, which has got a lot of the open space. They do onions and all the ag kind of happens down there. So definitely a big ag presence in the district.
Let's talk about, let's pivot now to some bills. And one thing that happened last year, which I'd love to get your take on, in 2025, House Bill 40 ended the state income tax on gold and silver, specifically precious metal bullion and monetized bullion. So first of all, so people know what that is. What is monetized bullion? Is that the coins that actually have a face value? Is that what monetized bullion is?
Yeah, that's my understanding. Right.
Okay.
So an old gold coins would say like $20 on it.
Yeah, sure. So talk about that as part of the $253 million tax cut that House Bill 40 did last year. This was part of the bill. Your thoughts on that, obviously given your background at the Money Metals Exchange.
Yes, I'm just on the sales team at Money Metals, so I take incoming calls, help people to say, look, I want to spend $10,000 on some gold and silver. How can we do this? How do we pay for it? How do we deliver it?
Right.
So you answer all those questions, objections, concerns, and we're pretty low key. We're not high pressure sales team. We're just there to kind of, if you want the order, take it. If not, then we'll talk to you hopefully later. But this tax cut bill last year, it reduced the state income tax. It eliminated the tax on veterans' income, and then also had a provision there to eliminate the taxes on gold and silver. A lot of states are moving away from it, and part of it is like it's not really a product. It's like buying money, right? Gold and silver are the original money. I mean, from the Old Testament times, gold and silver are money, and so it's really not. We don't believe should be treated as like just buying jewelry or something like that. Like it's like again, it's just switching. You don't go trade your $100 bill out for 520s and get taxed on it. Right. So a lot of states are moving away from it, and we did here as well.
And you agreed that was a good move?
Yeah. Sure.
So let's talk about you want to talk about, you mentioned that in the school system, you had seen COVID shots coming in, consent for 14-year-olds that are not obviously adults, where they wanted to maybe force a COVID shot on the child. You obviously were very alarmed by that, as were most Idahoans. Yeah. And you seem to be very committed to the medical mandate side. So let's talk about House Bill 808, which is about medical mandates, vaccine mandates. Talk about what you saw as the problem and what House Bill 808 does for the solution.
Well, in a step back, last year we passed the first in the nation Medical Freedom Act that was signed into law. It went through the House and Senate. The governor signed it last day in session last year. It was the biggest bill of the year, kind of by the end there, and which says that no one can be denied going to work, a job, or an entrance into a building because they refuse a medical intervention, is the term there, which refers to medication, a vaccine. Because even the COVID shot, I would argue, is not really a vaccine. So then we just didn't want to play games with it and say, well, we're calling it this and that, so now you have to do it. So you're trying to get a somewhat encompassing term there. because a lot of people are losing their jobs over refusing the COVID shot. And my opinion is just that your medical decisions are private. Like your
Of
medical
course.
records are private.
Right.
Your employer should be asking you to, well, did you take your cholesterol medication today? Did you take your whatever today? Or your chickenpox vaccine? I mean,
Right.
and if you want to get that stuff, I don't have a problem. That's your right. If you want to go get a flu shot every week for the rest of your life, I mean, I'm not here to stop you, and I'm not going to file legislation to stop you either. It's just that people need to be able to have that choice and have that choice respected. And I've seen that choice not respected.
And your point is that you have the choice not to get a COVID shot or not to take some medical, something that the government says you have to take. And you don't want private employers denying the ability for you to get a job or to lose the job you already have based on this type of medical decision that COVID kind of woke us all up to.
Yeah, and I think you saw a mentality there that there's just some folks say, well, this one, now for this disease, now we have to do it, and this and that. And so you saw it, and so you could take a step back, look at all the stuff, the school vaccine laws. So this bill today we were working on would change, the Idaho law says that if to go to school or daycare, vaccines are mandatory, except that you can opt out with religious, personal, or philosophical reasons. You got 3 exemptions, what's commonly called, which is pretty loose. In most states, a lot of states don't even have that. But still, there are schools and daycares, they'll tell people, they'll just quote that initial line, say, well, you have to get your shots to come to school. Well, not really. You're actually required to tell them that it's not required. And they're ignoring that as a way to, kind of push people into doing it. And all we're saying is, look, we need to be neutral as the government on here. If a parent wants to give a kid a chickenpox shot or not, that's up to them. If they don't want to, we should be trying to push people in and kind of in a forceful kind of way. So
does this require the daycare or the school to basically continue the line past, you have to have a shot, so the parent knows they can opt out? Well, what does the legislation do?
Yeah, currently it's an opt-out. So this would just say your shots are voluntary. It's up to you. So if school can't tell you that required.
Okay. And then this bill also deals with medical records. Talk about what the bill does relative to medical records.
Yeah, so there's a system called the IRIS system here, and you are automatically opted into this record keeping. So if you go to your doctor and you agree to a shot or not, they will just put that in your record automatically without getting your consent. It's kind of an issue people wrestle with for a while, because like everything you do when you go to a doctor, you sign forms for paperwork, you sign this and that. Like everything that you opt into, it's just the way we typically do it, except for this system. And, is it a huge deal in some ways? But it's like, if we're going to respect people's rights, we should respect the right not to opt in. If the system is so good, people just agree to it. And I think most of them probably will, because it is a centralized, network, data collection here. And so if you want to have that, fine. But we just don't want people to be blindly put into it without their agreement.
So Representative Beiswenger, let's talk about House Bill 747. Again, obviously, you are very into the faith, family, and freedom. And freedom is obviously very important to you in terms of ability to choose whether you want to opt in or opt out of something. You brought a bill, House Bill 747, which deals with mosquito districts. What's your bill, and what did you see as the problem, and what is this bill trying to solve?
Yeah, so after we passed medical freedom last year, someone from Jim County asked me, said, hey, can I run this situation by you? Like, there's about 23 counties have mosquito abatement taxing districts. So they have a special tax that pays for mosquito treatment, spraying, all the stuff that goes involved in it. I didn't even know really quite that existed. We don't have that in Boise County. But Gem County has it, Ada County has it, Payette, Twin, a bunch of them do, right? And I said, well, what's really the problem? She's like, well, they're spraying like private property. I was like, that doesn't sound great. And she's like, yeah, we request not to get sprayed, and they'll just ignore us and do it anyway. And it's like, not only that, they'll do aerial sprays and this stuff. And, I'm definitely in the Maha, kind of like, I'm a little more skeptical of some of this stuff. I know it's been around a while. The code is from like the 1960s or 70s. It's been there. And I assume the products have changed somewhat, but some of the products they use are potentially quite dangerous. They're banned in Europe in some places. They're under review by the EPA because it's very serious here. So it caught my attention there. And so we started drafting a bill, thinking different ways we could handle with it. And the bill at this point is like, there's the informed consent angle, right? Like, hey, people need to be aware of what's going on and to be consented on it, right? So they got, you need some website publication. And also the current law says, well, you can opt out, but you have to kind of fill out these forms and kind of beg for permission to be opted out. I'm like, well, wouldn't it be better if you just let them go and kind of work with them after the fact on it? So the language in the bill is just an easy opt out. And there is penalties if they disregard. So if you have someone who knowingly violates the law, they could be the district could face $1,000 fine plus attorney's fees to kind of bring these guys in line. We had the hearing in the local government committee. There were some district administrators who testified, and actually a lot of them were doing a good job, I thought. There's Canyon County and Twin and another one, Madison.
Doing a good job in terms of honoring people's wishes.
Correct. Okay. So if someone asked me to opt out, they would, but they would also continue the conversations like, hey, you've got this property here. Can we work on stuff like this? So it made it a bit more of a cooperative effort versus a top-down
discussion,
heavy handout. Like, that's great. So basically the bill was kind of modeled after the way they were operating and say, can we bring these other guys up to speed? And so they're doing it like that too. But obviously people don't want to be bit by mosquitoes. As the other side is like, well, we're kind of nervous about that too. Like how much freedom. And so you're debating property rights and health on one side, well, they're worried about their health and of the animals and so forth. So it's kind of a complicated issue, and it's like the state's kind of split on it. I've got some amendments. I think we can kind of massage it a little bit. But again, trying to at least just get an opt out and informed consent on it.
One of the things that I thought was impressive about the bill is that you talk about letting people know what products are being used. Talk about that part of the bill and why you think that's a critical part of it.
Well, there's two kind of categories I'm aware of. The one's called larvicides, and larvicides are preventative. So you could drop it into a water and it would basically prevent the mosquitoes from being born. And that's really the effective way to do it. And you find these districts that were doing, I'd say, a better job are using that a lot and really relying on that. And as far as we know, is fairly safe, right? But there's also these things called adulticides, and that's where you get these aerial sprays and stuff. And it's like, now you're fighting live mosquitoes. And well, you've just got to drench the area to make it happen. And some of those adulticides will hang up in the air, trying deliberately to try and catch them, right? So, okay, you beat these mosquitoes, but the people in Gem County are telling me like, there are some who will literally drive outside the spray zone and sleep in their cars to avoid getting sick because they're getting bloody noses, their animals are getting sick, bees are getting killed. I mean, I had a friend up there, they literally, again, they're not just running down the highway here. Like they're literally going into people's driveways and circling and spraying with the four-wheelers and stuff. It's really pretty invasive. Like I just kind of assume they're just going up and down the highways and main roads. And some places that's happening, but in some of these areas they're not. And that's where we're just kind of rein in here. I think it's a little like, if you're going to be going down someone's driveway, I think maybe we'd be talking to them and asking them, make sure that's okay with
also
them.
Spraying a chemical and they don't know what's being sprayed.
Yeah.
So you're saying that you want these companies, these district abatement districts to tell people what they're using.
Yeah, exactly. Just let them know what's going on. And some places do it. They have the website, they've got listed, they've got links. So some of them are doing it right, but some of them are just kind of are not.
So to remind people, you're on the Ag Affairs, Health and Welfare and Commerce and Human Resources Committee. One bill that came through, which I'd love to get your opinion on, was House Bill 601, which dealt with government unions and the prohibition of public employees from allowing taxpayer funds to promote government unions. Talk about that bill and whether you were supportive of it.
Yes, this bill kind of was focused on government unions, but mostly it seems to apply to teachers' unions in Idaho. I mean, there's not a huge union presence in Idaho overall. We are already a right-to-work state, as you mentioned here. People don't have to join a union to have a job. They can not join and still be employed. But this bill kind of says, and there's a question of whether government employees at all should be in unions. I mean, the original union people back in like the 1930s and 40s said unions were only ever intended for the private sector. But we have, whatever that is now, we now have, some unions for police and fire and certain spots and teachers. But the bill is trying to address is that these school districts are taking the money from teachers' paychecks and paying the union dues. They're letting the unions come on and operate on school property. And the unions are really a private lobbying organization. They're really a political kind of organization. Right. And we're just saying, like, we needed some healthy boundaries here. So, like, if someone wants to join the union and pay dues, that's fine. But if, we really shouldn't be using taxpayer money to kind of support that effort. They should just be doing that on their own.
Thank you for your work on that. And let's talk about, you are on the Health and Welfare. So as you probably know, this week, the health and welfare budget in the Senate went down 25-10, which is a pretty resounding rejection. You saw a lot of debate coming through health and welfare. So your general thoughts about health and welfare, the budget, Medicaid expansion, just anything that comes to mind that you think that maybe we've learned from the lesson of that vote yesterday.
Well, I mean, I wasn't, it's a Senate vote. It wasn't the House side.
Right.
I guess I'm told that some people thought it wasn't enough and some people thought it was too much. So you've got people voting no for different reasons, right?
Right.
So how they're going to bridge that gap remains to be seen. I mean, a lot of this stuff in health and welfare, it's a huge budget. It's a huge amount of the money that we spend here. And,
Second largest part of the budget, behind education.
It's a lot of money, a lot of it. And there's a lot of federal money behind it too, right? So you can look at a program and say, well, would this program happen? Well, it's $10 billion, but this program's only federal money. So, okay, we can cut it, let's say, but then it doesn't really help our state budget trying to balance it and keep taxes low and that kind of stuff. So you're trying to sort through all these things. It's really a challenge to find stuff here. We did cut provider rates here. So the amount of dollars paid to provider, let's say, was $50. Now it's 45, or different numbers for different groups. That was kind of the modifications we could make. We did take one provider for, I think, for like $32 to $29. It was a small cut this year, but also like they were still up 30% from where they were a couple of years ago. So we felt like it was a place we could touch without really hurting services. I mean, there are a lot of needy families, people with really severe medical conditions that can use help. And so those are all in place. So, but yeah, it's a tough place to look at. I mean, no matter what, you touch any budget, in health and welfare, and it's going to affect people in a substantial way.
Well, last year, Idaho did modify its Medicaid rules by saying if you've got to work, you got to do volunteer work, you've got to work at least 20 hours. You have to prove that you're kind of able-bodied in the game. And I know that was one thing, and lo and behold, it wound up in the big beautiful bill. So Idaho again, kind of at the forefront of some new ideas. And I know there's been some thoughts about how you ultimately reduce the roles, right? And so I think Representative Vanderwoude has an idea to reduce the roles by having everyone kind of reapply at the end of the year. So you have to kind of look the state in the eye and say, we're signing back up. Your thoughts about just trying to reduce the roles in general?
Well, I think kind of what you're referring to is Medicaid expansion. So this is it's kind of like health. It's kind of a spinoff of Obamacare, really. It's private health insurance, kind of funded by the state for working able adults. So if you're on disability, if you're a pregnant woman, if you're a minor, like that program wouldn't be for you. You'd be under regular Medicaid. This confuses a lot of people.
Yes.
But yes, this Medicaid expansion was voted in by the referendum, right? And at the time it was like $400 million. And then now it's like 1.3 billion. It's like tripled in price in just like 5 years. I mean, which I guess that's the way everything medical is these days. It's just, it's like watching the price of gold lately, right? Just up.
Yes.
And so we're really struggling with, the state budget and how do you keep that going? Well, this bill last year we ran, I think Jordan Redmond, started it, but it's definitely in sync with, I think, what Trump's wanting to do nationally now is that, hey, we need some kind of minimum requirements. But the struggle is like we send these off there and we have to get permission from the folks in DC to actually implement these. So we can't just do them. We have to pass a bill and then basically beg them to go along with it. And that's kind of the struggle I have with a lot of this stuff. As a small business guy here and there, and as a free market kind of guy, I'm like, man, I wish we could just have a little more flexibility.
Yeah, there's like not a lot of levers you can pull because the federal government really controls almost all the policy there. Really restricts the states from doing as much as they'd like to.
Yeah, I think there's probably some small modifications we could take to round these things out. This applies maybe to this person, not that. Fit Idaho values a little better, and just you really just at their mercy. The mercy of the feds to approve these little changes that I think are pretty common sense. But I mean, a little more favorable climate now, but still.
So we've covered some commerce and human resource. We've covered some health and welfare. I'd like to, as our last topic, talk about agriculture affairs because it means a lot to your constituents.
Definitely.
Water is so critical. The legislature passed a $30 million money last year to recharge the aquifer. There's some talk about creating more acre feet of water through dams and things like that. What are your constituents saying in terms of how concerned they are about that, and what do you think the state should do to help our agricultural business and the fact that we are growing and we have increasing demand on water?
Yeah, I mean, the water issue is huge. It's big. And it's a guy who grew up on the East and Midwest. Like, it was never like a thing.
Right, because it rains all the time. Yeah.
And also you come out here, like every radio cast, well, here's the update on rain. Here's this, right? It's really pervasive. So definitely something we got to keep an eye on. There's a whole water infrastructure that exists in this state. We put a bunch of money in to help with it. I think, getting energy through dams makes sense. And we're trying to Mountain Home, we had to put a whole bunch of pipeline from down to the Mountain Home Air Force Base to help with water to make it sufficient down there to make sure we keep that base down there. And they're looking at doing more stuff there. They want to pump, I think, from one of the dams to help get that water down there. So that's another expense they're working on. It's a big, project. It's not for one rep to fix. Let me tell you, it is up and down this building. Everybody wants to help get more water in here. And that's what it's going to take. So you got this water way underground, and you got the snowfall and all this stuff. So, and competing water rights we dealt with, last year, where who's first, who's second, who gets to do this,
Right.
what do they do that. I mean, it is complicated.
And then we got into almost a fight with Utah this year about when they wanted to do taxes on the refineries and pass it along to Idahoans and gas taxes. And then we were like, well, this is our water, and water is a big deal.
Yeah. So I guess a lot of what Trump was saying, or no, Trump, but the speaker was saying that a lot of the water goes into the Great Salt Lake, actually starts in Idaho. A lot of water comes from us and goes down to Nevada, into Utah and stuff like that. So things you wouldn't know about until you really start digging in and peeking around at what goes on.
Right. Don't pick on Idaho, right?
Yeah.
We got some water you need. Anyway, we've been grateful to spend some time with Representative Robert Beiswenger, who represents Legislative District 8 in Seat A, and he's in his first term. He's a freshman. And we thank you for joining us today on the Idaho House Republicans podcast. And before we sign off, as we always say, God bless the great state of Idaho. And thank you, Representative Robert Beiswenger, for joining us on the Idaho House Republicans podcast.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
Sunrise on the Snake River plain, red, white, and blue in the window pane. Work boots dusty from yesterday, but we're back at it the Idaho way.